I'll never understand why humans make noise with their eyes, but there they were, my humans' children, standing outside that hospital room. Their faces were wet and they were begging for the door to open, but the door stayed shut. To understand the silence of that door, you need to hear the sound that came long before. My name is Winston. I'm a French Bulldog, as lovable, loyal, and a bit stubborn as any other you might have come across. My story isn't really about me, though. It's about my human, my best friend. And it starts with a sound I'll never forget. Not the good kind, like the rustle of a treat bag opening, but a cold, sharp sound. It was the voice of her son, the tall man who smelled of hurry. He said words that made the air heavy. "You seem more like a mother to that dog than to your own kids." I didn't understand the words, of course, but I understood what they did. I felt my human's hand freeze mid-scratch on my ears. I saw the light in her eyes dim, like a candle snuffed out by a cold gust. That memory is from before the white room that smelled of flowers and antiseptic, where those same children one day came with water streaming from their eyes, pleading for something I didn't understand either. Their voices were soft and shaky that day in the hospital, so different from the sharp sound they'd used before. But to understand how we got to that room, you need to know where we were first. We were in a quiet place, a place with endless, identical hallways and a constant smell of soup and disinfectant. The other humans there moved slowly, and many had the same empty look I saw in my human. Her family brought her here. They said it was for her own good. But I, who slept at the foot of her bed every night, felt her heart beating slower. I saw her sit by the window for hours, staring at a world she no longer felt part of. Sometimes a silent tear would roll down her face, and I'd jump into her lap, despite my short legs, resting my heavy head there, just so she'd know she wasn't alone. My human thought her life was over, that her world had shrunk to fit inside that window pane. But they didn't count on me, and I, Winston, wasn't going to let her light go out. I was going to remind her that even when everyone else leaves, a good boy always stays. And the two of us were about to start our own quiet revolution. Our days in that silent place followed the slow rhythm of the sun crawling across the floor. My human would wake up, but her eyes took a while to find the day. I knew she was sad. Her smell was different, less sweet, more salty, like grass after a light rain. The red ball we used to play with in the garden of our old house sat untouched in the corner of the room. I'd nudge it with my nose now and then, a silent invitation, but she'd just run her hand over my head and let out a long, tired sigh. She didn't want to play. She just wanted to sit and watch the world through the glass. The visits were the worst part. I could sense them coming before I even heard their steps in the hallway. The air would shift, turning electric and tense. Her son, the tall man, and his partner, the woman who smelled of sharp artificial flowers, never stayed long. They'd come in, talk fast, their voices clashing with the calm of the room. They looked at their watches more than they looked at my human's face. They didn't like me. I could feel it. Sometimes the tall man would glance at me and his face would tighten. It was during one of those visits that he said those words, the ones that felt like a scratch. He was standing by the door, ready to leave. My human was petting me, and I was snoring softly, happy in that small moment. That's when he looked at us, and his voice cut through the air. "You seem more like a mother to that dog than to your own kids." My human's hand froze. She shrank into her chair, as if trying to make herself smaller. I licked her hand, trying to bring the warmth back, but the cold had already settled in.
It's funny, because they were the ones who brought me to her. Well, not exactly. They gave me as a gift, years ago, not long after the man with gentle hands and a soft voice her partner, went to sleep and never woke up. The house became too big and too quiet. I think they thought a puppy would fix the silence. But they didn't understand. I wasn't a distraction. I became a witness. I was there when their visits grew shorter, when their calls became rarer. I was there, lying on the rug, as they explained that the big house was too much for her, and that this place, the silent place, would be safer. They brought me along not out of love for me, but because she wouldn't leave me behind. I was the last piece of her old life she refused to let go of. And they saw me not as her companion, but as a stubborn burden she insisted on carrying. They didn't understand that, in truth, we were the ones carrying each other. I could feel the weight in the air every time they left. The door would close, and it was like all the oxygen in the room was sucked out with them. My human would grow even quieter, smaller in her chair. She was no longer the woman who took me on long walks, whose laugh rang like bells. She was a shadow, and I hated seeing that shadow. But I'm a bulldog. Stubbornness and loyalty run through my veins faster than I chase a ball. And I decided, right there, lying at her feet, that I wouldn't let that sadness win. I didn't know how, but I was going to bring my human back. The change didn't happen all at once. It wasn't a loud noise or a big event. It was small, quiet as my paws on the soft hallway floor. It started with a simple gesture, something no one, not even her family, could have predicted. A revolution that began with a bit of dirt under her nails. And before I tell you how a single seed in a clay pot changed absolutely everything, I need to ask you a favor. If our story so far has made you want to hug your companion a little tighter, whether they walk on 2 legs or 4, leave a like so our little light can travel and warm other hearts that might feel lost in the dark. And if you don't want to miss how we turned things around, becoming the talk of that silent place, subscribe to the channel to join our pack. Trust me, you'll want to see the look on their faces when they realized what my human was capable of. The revolution began with a new smell. One day, one of the humans who worked there, a woman with silent shoes and a smile that always reached her eyes, came into our room. She didn't bring food or clean sheets. She brought a small clay pot with a shy green sprout poking out of dark soil. She placed it on the windowsill and said soft words to my human. I didn't understand them, but I felt the kindness in them. At first, my human just looked at the pot. It was just another thing to see through the glass. But I was curious. That smell of wet earth was new, interesting. I got up, put my front paws on her lap, and stretched my nose to sniff the tiny green leaf. My curiosity did something months of silence couldn't. A small smile curled at the corner of my human's mouth. She reached out, not to me, but to the leaf, touching it gently with her fingertip.
That little pot became our secret project. Every morning, the first thing she did was check on it. She'd water it with a small cup, and I'd sit beside her, watching every drop. When the sun shifted, she'd move the pot to the warmest spot, and I'd move with it, lying in the square of sunlight next to our plant. She started talking again. At first, it was whispers to the green sprout. "Do you need more sun today?" she'd ask. And then she spoke to me. "Look, Winston, I think it grew a little." Her smell began to change, blending with the fresh scent of earth. Soon, one pot became 2, then 3. The windowsill got too small. The woman with silent shoes noticed. One day, she took us outside, not for a short walk, but to a forgotten patch of dirt behind the building. It was a bare square of earth where nothing grew. "It's yours," her voice said. For the first time in a long time, I saw a spark of defiance in my human's eyes. And then the real work began. Her hands, which used to rest idle in her lap, now dug into the soil. I helped, of course. I dug holes in the wrong places, chased the bugs her hands stirred up, and rolled in the dirt, getting completely filthy. And she laughed. Not a small, sad smile, but a real laugh deep from her belly that made my whole body wag with joy. Other humans from the silent place started coming out to watch us. At first from a distance, then closer, drawn by the color sprouting from the gray ground. Our little patch of earth transformed. It became a garden. The big day came with the afternoon sun. One of the plants, the one she talked to the most, bore fruit. It was round, red, and shone like a jewel. The first harvest. My human knelt, her hands dirty with life, and picked it with the utmost care. She held it in her palm and looked at it, and her face was no longer that of a woman who'd given up. It was the face of a queen gazing at her kingdom. She sat on the grass, pulled me close, and gave me a tiny piece. It tasted sweet and warm, like the sun. She shared the rest with the nurse and the others who now sat around our garden, quietly watching the magic. That day, she wasn't just a resident, she was the gardener, the creator. And that garden was proof that her light hadn't just stayed alive, it now shone bright enough to illuminate everyone around her. Our garden became the heart of that once silent place. It wasn't silent anymore. Now it hummed with soft conversations, laughter, and the gentle clink of gardening tools. My human was at the center of it all. Other humans, who used to barely leave their rooms, now came to help or just sit on the benches we'd set up, feeling the sun on their faces. The red ball rolled on the grass again, and my human's laughter became the soundtrack of our days. She found a new family, one that gathered around the smell of wet earth and the sweet taste of the tomatoes she grew. One day, the tall man and the woman with artificial flowers came from one of their quick visits, but she wasn't in her room. I heard their steps in the hallway, the hesitation at the door. One of the silent shoe humans led them to our garden. I saw them standing at the edge, looking like outsiders. The tall man's face was strange, like he was seeing someone he didn't recognize. His mother wasn't hunched in a chair, but kneeling in the dirt, laughing at something another woman said, her face flushed from the sun and her hands covered in soil. I was by her side, of course, belly on the cool grass. He called to her, but his voice came out weak, almost lost in the happy sounds of the garden.
The visit to the white, clean hospital room came weeks later. My human had spent too much time under the strong sun, and her body needed a forced rest. It wasn't serious, just a scare. But it was enough. When her son and daughter-in-law arrived at the hospital, their faces full of worry, they didn't find the frail woman they expected. The room was filled with flowers and vegetables from our garden, brought by her new friends, and I was there, sleeping at the foot of her bed, with special permission from the silent shoe nurse. That's when it happened. Seeing his mother, calm and serene, surrounded by proof of a rich life he didn't know, the tall man finally broke. Water streamed from his eyes, just as it used to from hers. He sat by her bed, took her hand, and his voice trembled. He asked for forgiveness, not just for that day, but for everything. For the short visits, the distance, the cold words. He looked at me, lying there, then at her, and repeated the phrase that had haunted us. "You said you seemed more like a mother to that dog than to us." I was angry, but seeing you now, I understand. He gave you something we didn't. He stayed. My human didn't say much. She just squeezed his hand back. A simple gesture, but not one of weakness. It was a gesture of peace. She no longer needed their approval to be happy. She already was. We returned to our garden the next day. Her life didn't change because of that apology.
because she had already changed it herself. Their visits became more frequent, longer. Sometimes they even helped water the plants. They were visitors in her world now, a world she built with dirt, seeds, and love. People say dogs offer unconditional love, but what I learned, lying under the warm sun next to my human as she tended her flowers, is that love is like a garden. Planting the seed isn't enough. You have to water it every day, pull out the weeds of loneliness, and have patience for the flowers to bloom. They said she was more a mother to me. Maybe they were right. Not because she loved her children less, but because I never forgot how to love her back, especially when she most needed to remember how to love herself.